Good afternoon. We're going to be taking a look at lesson 108 today, which is multiplying decimal numbers. Now, we have already kind of done this in class together, but this will be a quick reminder and a little bit of a look at the why it works with multiplying decimal numbers. Lesson 108. Okay, you don't need to draw this in your notes, but it's just a quick understanding of why this is going to work the way it is. Right here, I have my rectangle, we'll pretend it's a square, divided into 10 pieces. And this right here would be, hopefully right away you can give me the fraction for it, of 1/10. So that is 1/10 of the rectangle. Now, if I were to go like this and add in more lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now, this right here, this little tiny piece right up here in the corner, is 1/10 of 1/10. I hope you can kind of see how that is working. 1/10 of 1/10. It's 1/10 of the 1/10 that we originally started with. Now, if you were to write it out as a multiplication problem, you right away would go, oh yeah, Mrs. Gomes, I remember, of means multiply. So 1/10 of 1/10 would be 1/100th. Now notice when we multiply actually fractions and as we look at decimals, our numbers get smaller when we multiply. Usually when we're multiplying whole numbers, we're used to the numbers getting bigger. If I say 2 times 3 equals 6, well, I've gotten bigger. When you multiply with decimals or fractions, your numbers are actually going to get smaller. So here we have just an illustration of what this multiplication is doing. And then let's take a look at it with an actual decimal problem and see how it works just the same way. So where we said 1/10 of or times 1/10 equals 1/100th. If we were to write it out, it would be 1/10 times 1/10 equals 1/100th. Now, we don't usually see it written out horizontally like that because it's going to actually make it a little trickier for us. When we write it out and we write it out vertically, I think it will stick out nicely for you if I say 1/10 times 1/10. 1 times 1 is 1. Now, when we add and subtract decimals, you line them up. When we multiply decimals, you count them up. So, I would say here's one decimal place, and here's another decimal place, that's 2. So down here, I have to have 2 decimal places. Well, that leaves a big empty hole that I'm going to need to fill with a 0. So that's where I have 1/10 times 1/10 equals 1/100th. And you can see that right there because I had 2 decimal places up here. So down here, I have to have 2 decimal places as well. So let's take a look at that, just a couple practices together. And I think if you can remember the rule, which we'll write down in just a moment, it's going to make this a piece of cake. So let's go ahead and actually write the rule down in there of multiply decimals count the decimal places after multiplying. So you're going to multiply as normal and then count your decimal places after multiplying. Or you can put down our fun little words, also go ahead and add them, count them up. When you add and subtract, you line them up. When you multiply, you count them up. Now you're counting them up after you have done just your standard multiplication as if there were no decimals there at all. All right, let's do a couple together, and then tomorrow we'll practice some more in class as a class. All right, here's our first one. Let's do 7/10 times 2. Now notice it's just a straight out multiplication problem. Don't even worry about that decimal. 2 times 7 is 14. Multiply, then I'm going to count them up. Well, I only have one decimal place right here, so that means down here I have to have one decimal place. Now when you go to do your homework, you don't have to do the underlining unless it helps you, and if it's going to help you get it right, then do what you need to. But realize I count them up and I have to have the same number of decimal places at the top as I do at the bottom. Here, let's do another sample of about 21 times 3 2/10. Well, 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times 2 is 4. Permission to go to the next place value. 3 times 1 is 3. 3 times 2 is 6. Did it just like a regular multiplication problem. Now, I go up here and I say, okay, well, I've only got one decimal place up here, so I'm going to end up with one decimal place down here. Now remember I said that when you multiply, you're actually going to get smaller. That's only if both of them are decimals. Obviously, if you have a whole number in there, it's going to get bigger. Just like here we had 21 times 3. Well, that right there is 63. And then we have the 2/10 that we're going to throw in there as well. So that was just a little extra. Remember, multiply like normal and count up your decimals. All right, one more. I'll write it down. You do it, and then we'll check it together, and that'll be our last one for today. And let's do 22 hundredths times 31 hundredths. All right, go ahead, do your multiplication. Remember, when you start, you are just ignoring those decimal places and doing it like a regular multiplication problem. Now, it's an easy problem. I think I gave you plenty of time. So you would have 1 times 2 is 2, 1 times 2 is 2, going to the next place value, 3 times 2 is 6, 3 times 2 is 6. Adding them up is 286. Now I count my place value, 1, 2, 3, 4 decimal places. Down here, 1, 2, 3. Uh-oh. What'd you do? Do I put it over here where after the 2, or do I put it here in front of the 6? That's the question. Well, if you are following, remember, math is not thinking hard, it's thinking smart and finding patterns. We always started from that side, so we wouldn't go back there. We would have our 0 right here and our decimal place. Again, if you put a 0 here, that can just be taken away. Because remember, you can add or subtract decimals from the end and it doesn't change place value. But that 0 in the front would make a big difference. So, hopefully you followed what we were doing. Again, count them up. That's what you got to remember for multiplication with decimals. We'll practice a little bit more tomorrow when we are together. And I hope you have a fabulous evening.